Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome back to another session of Hanafi Fiqh. Today we're going to be looking at the rulings of the obligatory bath. Now the basis of the ruling of the obligatory bath is in the Quran in Surah Ma'idah, where Allah says, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ جُنَبًا فَطَهَّرُوا. So if you're in a state of ritual impurity, then purify yourselves with a thorough cleansing. Wash yourselves with a thorough cleansing. So the following three actions are obligatory integrals of the ghusl. Rinsing the mouth and rinsing the nose and washing whatever is possible once without hardship. That's it. It's very simple. It's even simpler than making wudu. There is basically only one thing you do. You wash your whole body, and by the whole body, your mouth also and your nose, if water gets there, and that's it. Your ghusl is done. So it's sufficient for water to reach the roots of a woman whose hair is braided. So if a woman's got tight braids, she's braided her hair very tight, she's got long hair, and in that case, she doesn't need to undo her braids, she just needs to get underneath the faucet, the shower, or pour water on her head and make sure that her roots get wet. She just rubs her head, make sure that the water reaches the roots of her hair, and that's enough for her. Also, washing anything that's possible to wash without hardship. For example, if you've got an earring, make sure that you either remove the earring, because obviously the hole is sufficient sometimes, it hangs, so make sure water gets in there, or move the earring round. If you've got any rings on, take the rings off, or basically turn the ring around so water gets inside totally. Your belly button, some people, especially people who are obese, have deep belly buttons. Sometimes you get fluff or dense material packed in their lint. Water may not penetrate. Also, a fat person may have a large folds of skin, right? And it's very easy for them to just rub themselves and make sure that it all gets wet. The obligatory bath is basically so easy that falling into water, if I happen to fall into the sea, right, and I was in the sea, as long as it takes to perform the Sunnah elements of the obligatory bath, and I were to come out, then I would have made the obligatory bath, and all the Sunnah elements would have been involved in there as well, just by me falling into the sea or a river. Standing under the rain, if I stand under the rain for a sufficient amount of time that it takes for me to do the obligatory bath, which takes technically up to a minute or even less with today's showers, then I've done all the Sunnah elements and I have the obligatory bath. I've purified myself, I've done the ghusl. So, just like everything in Islam, there are the Sunnah elements, and we're going to have a look at the Sunnah elements. The Sunnah elements of the ghusl are as following: the intention to say Bismillah, washing the hands up to the wrists. So basically, you say the intention, then you wash your hands up to the wrists, clean them of any impurity. You wash your private parts, whether there's impurity on them or not. It's good to wash your private parts, clean them, wash any filth or impurity off your body. You perform the ritual ablution first. So you go and make your wudu first, as per Sunnah, and then you have the obligatory bath. Now, there's no need to keep yourself in a state of making this for longer than is necessary. So technically, you could go in, wash the filth, wash your hands, wash the filth, make your ritual ablution covered, right? And then go and step into the shower and have the obligatory bath. And then, what is the obligatory bath? What are the Sunnah elements? To pour water over yourself 3 times, starting from the head, right shoulder, left shoulder. So you basically pour the water 3 times, and then to rub, to make sure water gets everywhere. Sometimes there's a bit, you just want to make sure that water's got everywhere it needs to get. And that's it, you're done. If you stand under a shower, a modern shower, that will take about 30 seconds, right? It's quick, flush, in and out, and you're done. Before the ghusl, and I think there's a mistake here in the text. Okay, so before the ghusl itself, you have the intention, which we mentioned, you have washing the hands, you have removing the filth, washing the private parts, and then the complete wudu. So this comes before the actual ghusl itself. And then the ghusl is what? Wash the mouth and the nose, wash the body 3 times completely, and that's it, you're done. That's the ghusl itself. There's a mistake in the chart here. It shouldn't say wash body 3 times completely here. Ghusl is of 3 types. You have when it's obligatory for you to have the purification bath, when it's mandatory for you, it's wajib for you, and when it's recommended for you. And we'll have a look at that in turn. So that which obligates the purificatory bath, the emission of sperm, sexual fluid, mani it's known as, that leaves its normal place inside the body with pleasure, even if it comes out without pleasure for any reasons such as a wet dream or by looking at someone or something with lust. So basically, anytime sexual fluid exits your body, whether it's with pleasure or without pleasure, if sexual fluid has exited the body due to intercourse, playing with your spouse, looking at something with lust, then you need to perform the obligatory bath. We're going to look at these a bit in detail as we go on. The disappearance of the head of the penis into the vagina or anus of a living human being whose body is desirable, even without emission of sexual fluid. Most of you are thinking, the anus of a human being, we know that's haram, right? First of all, it needs to be made clear, it's absolutely haram. Haram. So why did the author mention this here? Basically, he's mentioned it. It's a book on fiqh, so it's there to cover every single hypothetical scenario that humans come across, good and bad. So he's no way endorsing this, but he's writing a book on fiqh which needs to cover everything that hypothetically a Muslim can fall into. So first and foremost, through the front exit is halal. Through the back exit for man and woman is haram. But if a human being, if a unrighteous human being was to perform this action, what would be the legal ruling upon him? What would he need to do to rectify the condition he's in now? First of all, obviously, you repent and you turn back to Allah. Now, what does he need to do? Well, the fiqh ruling is that it's treated like sexual penetration. You need to have the obligatory bath. The ending of menstruation or postnatal bleeding. We're going to look at the fiqh of menstruation, inshallah, in due time. So when a woman exits her menstruation or postnatal bleeding, then the obligation to pray falls back on her again, so she needs to make the obligatory bath. Okay, so here's a chart here. So you have ejaculation, and then the ruling affirmed, sexual fluid leaves place of origin with desire, active or effective. Active would be the actual release of sexual fluid, and effective would mean that you could probably try to stop the flow or stem the flow or keep wiping the flow, or due to clothes it doesn't completely come out. Whatever the cause may be, the minute sexual fluid has moved from its original place in the body and exits, then you need to make the obligatory bath. Ruling manifests when it exits. So caution, if it exits after ghusl, then ghusl is invalidated except if. What does this mean? This basically means that if somebody were to have a wet dream or sexual relations with his spouse and he released sexual fluid or she released sexual fluid, the bath would become obligatory upon them. In this instance, he would need to clean himself and go and have his bath. Now, caution. If during his bath, if any amount of sexual fluid continues to leak while he's having his bath, then his bath is null and void, right? And if after his bath, let's say he's had sexual relations, within 5 minutes he's in the toilet, he's in the bathroom having his shower, he showers in 30 seconds and comes out. You need to make sure that nothing exits you. So how would you know that? If you were to go for a long walk, right, that allows everything to come out. It gives you enough time to allow everything to come out. Or you go to sleep for a while, because when you sleep, everything relaxes and everything tends to flow and leave the body. Or you relieve yourself, and get rid of all the sexual fluid that's in your piping, your waterworks, your plumbing, so to speak. So in these 3 instances, if you do any of these 3 instances and then you have the obligatory bath, and upon finishing, when you check yourself and you find that there's some moistness or wetness there, we don't assume that it's sexual fluid. Mandatory. For someone who becomes a Muslim while in a state of major ritual impurity, although the sounder opinion is that bath is obligatory upon him and not mandatory. So somebody becomes a Muslim. So let's say we've got George here. George decides to become a Muslim now. George had relations with his spouse last night, but he didn't have a shower. In that instance, it's mandatory upon him to have a bath. It's mandatory upon him to have a ghusl to purify himself. If, however, he had a shower, if he had marital relations with his spouse the night before, had a shower, first thing in the morning he gets up and goes to meet the local imam in the mosque and takes his shahada, in this instance he would have purified himself by having the bath, so there's no need for him to have the bath again. So even if a non-Muslim is in a state of major ritual impurity, he needs to have the bath after he becomes a Muslim. Recommended. So it's recommended to perform the ghusl on the Friday, for the Friday prayer, and we'll have a look at that in detail next. On the two Eids, entering into the state of pilgrim sanctity, ihram, the day of Arafah, which we shall look at in the chapter on Hajj, entering of Mecca, entering Medina, the illuminated city, and visiting the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, so the Friday prayer. The stronger opinion is that you make it for the actual prayer. So what you're supposed to do is wake up in the morning, you have your ghusl, and with the intention that that's going to be for the Friday prayer. So then if you can, you hold on to your wudu until the Friday prayer and pray with that wudu. If, however, you were to break your wudu and then make a fresh wudu, that would not be acting upon the sunnah, because you've made a fresh wudu now. The sunnah was to have a Friday bath for the Friday prayer, right? So it's recommended to do that. There is another opinion, which is that no, it's for the actual day and it's not for the prayer. So then in the morning you wake up and have a bath for the actual day. And in this instance, then it would be a sunnah for the traveler, because it's not obligatory for a traveler to pray Jum'ah. And for a woman, also it's not obligatory for her to pray the Jum'ah. So in that instance, she would also to benefit from the reward of the sunnah, and for the man to benefit from the reward of the sunnah, to make the obligatory bath. Ghusl for entering pilgrim sanctity. If somebody decides to don the ihram, to enter pilgrim sanctity, then in that instance, you'd have a bath for basically cleansingness. It's part of the sunnahs of the rites of Hajj and Umrah, and we're going to look at them more in detail when we get to that subject. Even if a woman is menstruating, she would still have that bath for purposes of cleanliness, for entering the pilgrim sanctity, entering the state of ihram. On the day of Arafah also, it's recommended. And further, it's recommended when you're dirty, before meeting people, repenting from sins, before a disaster, and Laylatul Qadr, among other things. Okay, types of sexual fluid. Now, sexual fluid has three different types that the scholars understand. You have ejaculate, which is known as mani. This is ejaculate is also known as sperm, when you have sexual intercourse or a wet dream and you ejaculate. This is a thick, viscous type liquid that after a while becomes transparent in color. It's milky in color, and scholars do mention that it smells like bread when it's dry, and it smells like eggs when it smells like bread when it's fresh, and it smells like eggs when it's dry. Pre-sexual fluid, which is known as madi, that is a thin, it's a viscous liquid, it's thin, it's transparent, it happens when you're sexually aroused or before sexual intercourse. And then we have something called Wadi, which is a thick, cloudy substance. Now, it's not, you probably will never experience this in your life, but it's in the books, because it does happen to people from time to time. Sometimes when you're sick, or you're recovering from an illness, or you before urination or after urination, you may urinate a thick, cloudy type of substance that's going to be different from ejaculate, and you know if you've got it. And these two substances, Wadi and Madi, you do not need to make the obligatory bath. You only need to make the obligatory bath if you ejaculate, mani. That's the only one that necessitates obligatory bath out of the 3 types of ghusl is not necessary after any of the following: the exit of madi or wadi, pre-sexual fluid, and the other thick type of fluid that sometimes may come out after urination. It will break your wudu, but you will not need to have the purification bath. It doesn't necessitate the purification bath over you. Waking up after having a wet dream, yet finding no wetness even for a woman. So we'll discuss this more in the next slide. But here, if you've had a wet dream, you've had a dream of a sexual nature, and in the morning you wake up and you find no wetness there, then you do not need to make the obligatory bath. Entering a finger or its like into the vagina does not break your wudu. Waking up after having a wet dream yet finding no wetness even for a woman. If liquid is found, then perform ghusl unless sure it's wadi. So if you wake up and you find no wetness upon you, it's okay. You don't need to make ghusl. But if you do find wetness, you make ghusl regardless, if and unless you're sure that it's not sexual ejaculate. If you wake up and you don't remember a dream and believe the moisture is sperm or otherwise, then you must perform ghusl unless sure it's not sperm. So again, if you wake up and you don't remember a dream and you find wetness there, then it's best to perform ghusl again, unless you're sure that it's not sexual fluid. And sometimes people may leak at night, so generally people will know. But if you're, and it's not difficult to determine, if you know these things, it's not difficult to determine what that fluid is. So if you don't know, make ghusl. If you know what it is, you don't need to make ghusl. So thank you very much for attending today's lesson. Next lesson, inshallah, we shall be looking at the rulings of tayammum, the dry ablution.